Okay, so we're going to start today with exercise 226, and this is the first of the kind of getting good quality stuff out besides renderings. We're going to talk today about cutting a section through the building, and if you did a good job modeling the building, then you have a lot to show in the section. If you haven't really finished modeling, then you won't have as much to show. But I still want you to do the section today because it's important to get this started and to understand the skills that are involved in cutting the section. Because as we go forward, we're going to move out of doing renderings and into getting line drawings and good quality stuff, line drawings and plans and sections and that sort of thing out of Rhino so that you can use it when you get to 220. And that's really a skill that I want you guys to have. So before I get into sections and stuff, I want to tell you about something that I heard on Thursday last week. So I was invited to be a guest speaker at Berkeley, and while I was there, I ran into a bunch of students who graduated from DVC. Not a surprise, because there's a large number of people there. And most of the people that I saw, because of the class that I was guest speaking for, were all in their fourth and final year at Berkeley. Okay, so I guess technically it would be their second or third year at Berkeley because they were here first. But in talking to many of them, they said that the single best thing that they learned at DVC was how to render in V-Ray. And it was probably the most important thing that they learned. They also told me that everybody who is at Berkeley for all 4 years that they meet up with halfway through really, really, quote, hates them because they know how to render. And everybody else doesn't. So I want you guys to know that what you're learning right now is extraordinarily valuable for what you're going to be doing at Berkeley. And that's not coming from me telling you that that's important. It's coming from people who are there right now who believe that this is really, really important. So the one other thing that they told me is that emphasizing a little bit more about getting quality drawings out of your 3D models was a good thing. And so we're going to spend at least 3 class days of the remaining 6 days doing this sort of thing. So there are only 3 weeks of class left, which means there are only 6 days of class left. We're going to do a sectional rendering today. We'll do a line drawing section, a line drawing plan, and a line drawing elevation, which gets us to 5 days, right? 4 days, which leaves us with 2 remaining days in that last week. I won't script what those days are until we get a little bit closer so I can see where everybody is, and then we'll decide what we want to cover in those last 2 lectures. So I'm telling you that because I want to emphasize it's important, but I also want you to know that we're kind of coming toward the end. So like I said last class, the more complete your model is right now, the better off you're going to be. So try to finish it up so that we can be working with it. Okay, so cutting sections is probably one of the most valuable things that you can learn to do as part of your modeling techniques. Depending on who your studio head is, they may or may not like sectional renderings. They may prefer sectional drawings, and you'll have to kind of weigh that out. I'm going to show you both. They're kind of just an evolution of each other anyway. But at the same time, I think they're both valuable, and I think you can create some really, really cool-looking graphics by using these techniques. So I have my model established here in the scene. I went ahead and I opened the daytime scene because I was going to do a daytime render. You could do a night sectional render if you have your night scene well resolved and you want to do that. Generally speaking, the day is a little bit easier to work with, so we'll start with the daytime scene. And the first thing that I do before I do anything related to a section is I do a save as, and I save it as its own file, because everything that's involved in creating a section is going to massively screw up your files and everything else. We're going to break things apart. We're going to split them. We're really going to destroy them. So we want to do it on a copy, not on the original file. So the first thing I did is I did a save as, and this is the sectional render for spring of 2016. So I have a renamed file, and now I can start to work with it. Okay? So as I move into creating the section, I have to think about what view do I want to create a section of. What do I want to try to show in my particular building? And for me, there's really only 2 sections that are that valuable. One of them would be to cut through this kind of double-stacked bedroom area and to be able to look in and see the stairs. And the other one would be a long section cut through the stairs where we could actually see the stairs. Those are kind of the two valuable sections. And as I start to try to explore what's a good section or not, I'm going to use a plugin that's been installed on all these computers. It's called the SectionTools plugin. And it's available online for free. If you have your own computer and you're working on your own computer, you can actually download it as a plugin. It's made by Rhino. I would bet that it will be included in Rhino 6 when they release Rhino 6. So it's just kind of a precursor to that. But it's very, very useful. The problem with the SectionTools plugin is that it doesn't coordinate with V-Ray. So you can't use it and then render in V-Ray. So we have to do some other stuff to get the rendering. However, it's great for actually seeing what's going on. So before we get started on my official section, I want to create a layer. And I'm going to call that layer section. Or it could be section 01. And then underneath the section 01 layer, I'm going to create a sublayer for plane. And on this sublayer for plane, I'm going to draw a really large plane that represents the section that I'm ultimately going to cut. And so I'll come over here to the surface tools, and I'm going to create this vertical plane right here. And I'll draw a vertical plane that goes all the way through everything, and it's just really, really large. Okay, let me go ahead and move it down so that it does for sure intersect with everything in my model like that. That's what I'm looking for. Now, it isn't positioned quite correctly, so now that it's selected, I'm going to go ahead and move it in the top view. And then we'll zoom in here. And I'll decide where exactly I want to be cutting through my building. So I'd like to cut, in this particular instance, I'll cut right through there, which will cut through the stairs, which is nice. My other option would be to do a vertical plane in the opposite direction. Let me just copy this in place, and then we'll rotate it by 90. And then I can move this one we'll move it to somewhere in that general vicinity, like that. Okay? So those would be my two options for kind of exploring which section to do. And I established those planes just to help me kind of see. So now we're going to use that SectionTools plugin. No worries. I should have done that. Sorry. And I can do the SectionTools commands by going up to the menu and going to SectionTools. There's some keyboard shortcuts for doing it as well. I'll tell you all of those as I'm working here. But the first thing that I need to do is actually create the section. So I'm going to go to the SectionTools menu and then click on Create. The key command for that is StCreate. Right? So it says first select objects to section and press Enter for all visible objects. Okay? If I press Enter, I'll get everything, which is fine. Or I could do the StCreate and just select everything except for my planes, which is probably a better strategy. I'll go ahead and hit Enter. Now I have options. So the first thing is, what direction do I want the section to be? In this case, the x-axis will be my first one. Okay? When I come over here, most of these are fine. But when we come over to solid mode, I want to make sure that it is on surfaces. Okay? And the arrow scale is 1 is just fine. And I'll go ahead and press Enter to accept the options. So now I get this little, what looks like a section line that's floating. And sometimes it's easier to place it or to see it in this view. Now this is the opposite of the direction that I want it to go. So if I type F for flip, it's going to go the opposite way, which is how I want it. Now that it's going in the correct direction, I'll come here and I'll just snap to the top of my surface. Okay, and it creates that first section. I'll go ahead and hit Enter when I'm done. You could create multiple sections. And it will go ahead and it will create a layer called ST00 that's locked, that has some of the section cuts on it. Okay? So now let me turn off my, let's make this active. Let me turn off my planes for just a second. And if I zoom in here, see how we can kind of see that yellow line that goes through my building? Okay, that's what the SectionTools command created for me. But I can take it a step further, and what I can do is I can type StView or StView Sections, or I can go to the menu here and go to View Sections, StView right there. And when I do that, it's going to say Select Sections, or I can click for a list. Now, it's easy because I only have one right now, but if you have a lot of sections, usually you want to click on the list to see all of the sections. And I'll go ahead and say OK. And then it's going to say Select Viewport to enable ST00. Here, you're going to type in what the viewport name is. So in this case, the view that I have is Interior Room 1. So I'll do Interior Room 1, and then Enter. And it will then dynamically slice through my building at the level, right, or at the section that I cut, which is pretty nice. Okay, so now I get a preview of what the section is going to look like for me. However, like I said, when I do the rendering, right, it's going to bring back the rest of the building. So this isn't a permanent thing, but it'll let me see, do I really like this section cut? Do I like the way it's going to look? Do I want to move it? Do I want to change it? Etc. So in this case, it looks pretty good, and we'll go ahead and use this as my section. So I'm pretty happy with it. Okay? So the other thing that the ST00 is supposed to create, and if I were to select these right now, let me select objects, it's supposed to create little fills where the objects have been cut through. It doesn't always work, right? So it created a fill right there and right there, but it didn't actually fill in the rest of these walls. So before I get too far along, underneath my Section 1 layer, I'm going to create another sublayer, and we're going to call this, I don't know, cut, or section cut, or something like that. And this will allow me to go in and actually fill in the walls with a surface. So we'll really quickly go through here with some vertical planes. And I'm just going to fill in everything that I've cut through here. And so it would be nice if it did it for us, but unfortunately it didn't. So now it did, luckily, fill in all of the little stairs that I cut through, so that's nice. I don't have to go through them. Come across here. No, I'm in the StView, which is giving me kind of a hybrid preview view. Technically speaking, I could switch my view into rendered, and we might see it a little bit better, though this might tank things out a little bit. There you go. So you can see it. So it did fill in, like it cut through my couch, and it filled in those little bits of my couch. This is not quite filled in. To me, working in the rendered mode when it's something this heavy is rather challenging. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going with my vertical planes here. Like that. So I have that filled in. Now I also would like to fill in some of this down here so that that's filled in. And it would be nice, let's fill in this one. Just trying to give some ground here. Like that. And I'll also take this curve and I'll offset that curve. Let me do it in the front view here. I don't know, maybe 50 feet. There we go. I'll take these two and I'll loft them together. It's just giving me some ground. You guys see how that's working? Same thing here. And the StCreate made these curves for me, so I didn't have to do anything to create them. Let me go ahead and offset this one. Go that way. Oops. And I'll loft that together. Looks like I missed a little bit in here. I might need to fill that in a little bit more. Let me tell you what. Let me get rid of this for a second. Let me get rid of this, and I'll create a quick little polyline that goes there to there.
Why does Rhino do that while jump through objects when scrolling?
Yeah, the zoom, I need to reorient my zoom. If I selected something and then said zoom selected, it would solve that problem. So let me take these, let me join them, and then I'm going to offset them in the side view here. So we'll take this, and we'll take this, and we'll loft those together. And then I can actually get rid of these surfaces because they're overlapping. And technically speaking, these two surfaces overlap a little bit, but we're just going to go with it for right now. Okay, so all of those are on this cut layer, which is essentially filling in what I'm seeing, right? And I'll want to create a special material for whatever the cut is, and I'll do that in just a second. Okay, but before we can actually do this, and you guys have probably noticed this before, how many people have cut a section in SketchUp before? Okay, if you were in 135, you definitely did. I hope you did, at least. And when you did cut that section, you noticed immediately that the sun suddenly goes right through the section, right? Which really isn't very accurate as to trying to do our interior render. We'd like to make it match up with what the sun actually does. So in Rhino and V-Ray, we can do something kind of like that, but it takes a little bit of work, and that's what we're going to do in the next step of this. We're going to use a special material that couldn't actually exist in real life, but it exists in the world of V-Ray. And what that material is it's opaque to sunlight, right? It blocks sunlight, but it's transparent to the eye, so we can see through it. Kind of weird in concept, but it works. And it will work perfectly for what we're trying to do here because it will allow us to see how the light falls inside the building. Okay? But it takes a little bit of work to do that. So now that we have this established, before I get too far, I'm going to set up a view that I can come back to. So we'll say maybe something like this as my sectional render view. Let me go ahead and go to Set View, Named Views. I'll click Save, and we'll call this Sectional Render 0, 0, 0. I'm going to name it 0, 0 because that's what the SGCreate was. Okay, so I have that saved, so I can come back to it. And let me, while we're here, let me rename this to Section 0, 0. I'm just trying to make them all consistent, and we'll put this under the Section 0, 0 layer. All right, so now I'm going to get out of the section view that I created. So I'll go to SectionTools, Clear All Views. So we're back to where we were before. Okay, and I'll turn on my plane right there. And I'm going to hide this one for right now because I want to concentrate on just this one plane. Okay? So now comes the destructive part. So in order for this to actually work as a section, I'm going to have to split everything. So I have a half that I'm going to make this see-through material and another half that contains all the materials that are normally on this particular object. Now there's a little bit of problem that happens because I brought all of these in as blocks. Okay? So before I do anything, I'm going to have to explode those blocks. So if I select my object or my block and I type explode, right, it'll go through and it will explode my blocks, right? And I may end up having to do a few more explosions, but I think because I had everything in this file as just one block, I only had to do one explosion. So it wasn't too bad. And you can actually see, well, there's a few other things that came in that are still blocks here, like my grass and stuff, but I'm not going to worry about those for right now. But you can see that when I exploded, it populated all of the stuff from my base, my retreat, into their respective layers with all the materials and everything. So it basically took my linked file and threw it all into this one file, okay, which is not what you want to do for a permanent, but for the sake of cutting the section, it works pretty nicely. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to use this surface as a split. So I'll type split, select objects to split. It's going to be everything except for this surface. And I don't really want to select the section tools. So let me go ahead and let me step back for 1 second. I want to create a layer. Let's get out of this. Just a temporary layer that I can be on with nothing on it, so I can lock all of my section stuff, and then we'll go ahead and do the split. So let me go to split, we'll select everything, including the disk. What? Hold on a second. How did I lock my water?
Oh, is that what that is? Is the water, the ocean?
Yeah, that's the ocean. Let me get new there. All right, so let's try that one more time. Split. Select my cutting objects. It's that surface. Oh, come on. Well, it kind of doesn't matter anymore. Ah. Hold on. See, it happens to me too, right? All right, let's just try this again. Split. All of that. And there we go. Split. That. Really? Fine. This is driving me nuts. It's not on a locked layer. Let me I have to explode. That's the problem. Sorry, I never exploded the water. Now I can do it. All right. Ta-da. Okay, that's locked. There we go. Let's split this with this surface. And this is the kind of thing where you have to give it some time. Okay. I also have a bunch of split faileds that happen, so that means that there's probably still some blocks that are in here that's not splitting correctly. Or they could be just single objects by themselves that don't get intersected and therefore don't get split. Okay, so it finished its split. And so now if I were to look at this in the side view, and let me turn on the right side view. Let's go to Set View Right. And let's go to wireframe here. Okay. When I look at this, let's actually go to we're going to go to Set View Left instead, just so that I have an easier time selecting it. All of these objects, if I did it correctly, should select. Right? Looks like the couch didn't split correctly, so I'll need to take the couch and explode it. And then we need to split the couch with this. All right, so that's done. So let's try that selection again. All right, looks pretty good. So this is what we should be getting. In the side view, we should be able to select everything on one side of the line. Do you guys see how that works? Okay. Now that I have everything on that side of the line selected, right, I need to apply, except for what?
The sun.
The sun won't matter. The sun can stay there. I can't apply a material to the sun anyway. So now I need to go ahead and apply a material to these objects. And so the material that I'm going to use is something called a see-through material. And I have it loaded, and I actually have a tutorial written up, if we went to the digital tools site, for how to make it. But you can also, so let's see, tutorials, V-Ray, it's down here somewhere. Oops. I'm sorry, I forget the number. There it is, 8.22 see-through. This will tell you how to make it from scratch. If I were logged in, I'd be able to download it so that I wouldn't have to make it. So it's there if you need it. I'm going to go ahead and load it because I already have it on my flash drive. And let me go to my resources, go to V-Ray, V-Ray materials, and it is under special materials, see-through. There it is, and we'll go ahead and load it. When I look at it, it's right here. It should be transparent like that. That's the idea. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this material to the selection, except I still want things that are made of glass to be transparent. Okay? So I'm going to go through and look for anything that's made out of glass. So I have a glass railing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock whatever is glass so that it removes it from the selection set. You see how it removed it there? So I have a glass railing. Let's keep coming down here. Okay, here we go. Window glass. We'll get rid of that. There's window glass. We'll get rid of that. And I'll keep coming down here. And that's it. All right, we're just making sure that it isn't anywhere else. So the glass has been deselected, which is important. Now I can go to my materials, and I'll apply the see-through material to the selection. Apply material to selection. Okay, so all of that's selected, or all of that now has a see-through material applied to it. Now I need to go back and I need to select those glass pieces that I deselected before. So I'll come down here, and on each of the glass pieces I'll say select objects. Oh, thank you. Select objects. And we'll go to the glass here, and we will select the objects here. Okay, so I think, I know, but I think that my windows were blocks. And they didn't explode. It didn't matter because I didn't intersect them, which is why I didn't see them. But let's zoom in here for a second, and let me pick my windows. Zoom selected. Actually, you know what? Let me just do SEL block to select them all, which includes my light fixtures and my windows there. Let's deselect my light fixtures. Oops. Come on. It wouldn't harm them, but I don't want to have to deal with them, so I'm not going to. So now those are selected. Let me explode. Now those are exploded. Before I get too far, I'm going to go ahead and apply that see-through material. But again, I have to lock the window glass first. All right. And then let me go to my materials, and we'll apply that see-through material. Apply to selected. All right. So now that that's been done, I'm going to go through and I'm going to select all of the window glass. So we'll say select objects there, and where's my other one? There. Select objects. There we go. And my railing. Select objects. There we go. And somehow it's not. It's being really. Really? You didn't explode. Oh, I never exploded them, did I? I just selected them. All right, my fault.
No, I can't. I did my computer. Every computer I go into has a problem. It's not me, it's the computer.
All right, so now let's try it. All right, so let me deselect my glass. All right. And let me apply my see-through material, not to the once they were exploded. It's okay. I'm going to override it in a second. Okay, so now I have those. Now we'll go back and I'll select all of these. Select objects. Select objects. There, I selected it correctly that time. The glass railing is the last one. Select objects. Now, I don't want anything on this side of my cut to be selected. So I'm going to hold down Control, and we're going to deselect the windows that are on this side, like that. So it's only the glass that's on the outside. Then we'll go to Materials, and I need just a plain transparent material that's transparent to the sun, transparent to visually, just plain transparent. So let me go ahead and say Create Material, Standard, and I'll just call this transparent. I'll say OK. And my transparency just has to be set to white. And if I preview it, it's there. I will apply that transparent material to all of that glass. So now all of that transparent has been applied there. OK, so now, if we were to look at this rendered view, right, let me turn off the big plane, because I don't need that anymore. So let's see here. It's right there. We'll turn it off. I'm going to set my view, which I already set before. I'm going to go to StView Sectional Render. There it is. Right? Now, it doesn't matter that it kept the StCreate. That's irrelevant to what I'm going to be rendering right now. Okay? The important thing is that I applied those materials, because otherwise I would see the building when I went to render it. OK, so I have that. I want to make the cut layer have a material on it. So let me go to Materials. And I can choose some kind of a basic material for what I've cut through. Essentially black it out. So let me do a section. We'll call this material section cut. And we'll just go ahead and make it black for right now. Right? And I'll apply no shine or anything to it. I'll apply this to the section cut layer, if I can find it. You know what? Let me apply it this way. And it is the section cut. There we go. Okay, there it's applied. Okay, so now I can go ahead and do my render. So I know that this has the potential to take some time. So I'll let it run, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about what happens. I am going to turn on distributed rendering, and I'm going to do, let me do a small one first, just to see if it works. And I'll turn off distributed rendering for this one. And then once it's done, I'll have you come back and we'll talk about what worked and what potentially doesn't work as part of it. Okay? So the small render went fairly quickly, but this is one of those things you always have to check on a few things. So it turns out that my blocks that were my lights are still there floating. But all of the lights that I installed, and this is why you do the section after you get everything else set, you see that all the lights that I installed inside are still casting correctly. Sunlight's falling into the building the way it's supposed to be. We're seeing the glass and the stairs the way it should be, but we see a nice cut through the building. And so in this particular view, I don't like the view because I'm seeing too much of this ground. I want to turn the view so that I'm not seeing kind of this chop part. I've got a little bit of issue here with the edge intersecting that white plane that needs to be photoshopped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explode and get rid of these blocks here so that they go away. I'll make them the same see-through material, and then I'll adjust the view and I'll do a little bit higher quality render, and we'll have another look at it.
And then for some reason, I'm assuming you have lights on the right side building, but they're not coming through.
No, I actually didn't have any lights there. I should have had some lights there. It's my mistake. Okay, so there it is in its final form. A couple things to note. I did correct for, yeah, it's different when you see it here. I did correct for the lights that were floating out here, so I got rid of those. And if we look here, as I zoom in, it's cut through the couch, it's cut through the paintings, it's basically cut through everything the way it should be. Actually, it looks like I should have filled in the edge of the painting. I must have missed that. But you can always go back and touch those kinds of things up. But essentially, what we're looking at is a building section cut where the light is being cast inside. Anywhere that the sun would be falling into the building, it would be coming in. In this particular instance, the section cut doesn't really show where that would be. I can do another section cut looking the opposite direction, and we'd see the sun coming in the building. And maybe I can do that so you guys can see it. Maybe we'll do it next class. But the point is that this is now acting as a full section of my building, but it's a rendering, so I can see into the building the way that we're trying to establish here. So I know it's a lot of steps, and I know it's destructive to your model, but it can be very, very advantageous in the long run, and it's certainly better than doing the SketchUp section where you have the sun coming in. So we can actually see what the sun looks like inside the building without the wide open sun in this particular section view. So we'll move from here. Next class we'll actually create some line drawings of the section, or we might do elevations. I've got to go double check the order of things. But we'll get into that and creating the line drawings, but it's built upon the same set of strategies where we create these section views. Even if you think about doing a plan, when we cut through the building for a plan, it's essentially a section view. It's just in the opposite direction. It's looking down instead of to the side. So this is very much along the lines of what we're going to be doing. So I know you guys are all at a place where you're different. We're working on different things. Again, I encourage you to try to finish the 3D model sooner rather than later, because if you're doing these drawings and stuff, you won't have to redo them as part of the final. You can actually be done with them. Okay? The other thing that I'm working toward making for you guys is something that will be available shortly under the V-Ray section. It'll be this V-Ray quick rendering setups that'll have VisOp files coupled with HDRIs and all the settings that you need. So here's a basic day, scene 1. You can download the actual HDRI background that I use. It'll tell you what time and day you should set your sun, what the shutter speed should be, and the variety of the other settings. You also can download, right here will be the VisOp file that you can click on and download and then load it. So this is to try to make your life easier when you get toward the final, so that they're kind of ready to go. And I'll have a bunch of those set up, I hope, soon, including some night scenes. Right now I only have the day scenes, but you'll be able to load those in and use those straight away. Okay?